You're listening to an African Elements top news story for April 2nd, 2025. Please visit our website at africanelements.org for more daily news. DRC Human Rights Violations, M23, 2025 UN Report Findings, by Darius Spearman, African Elements. The situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, is heartbreaking. We're seeing a major escalation of violence, much of it driven by the M23 rebel group. This isn't just fighting between soldiers, it's deeply tied to serious human rights violations affecting our brothers and sisters there. The scale of suffering demands our attention, especially as international efforts seem to fall short. Furthermore, understanding this crisis requires looking at the complex web of regional politics and even global health challenges that leave vulnerable populations exposed. The resurgence of the M23 rebels has brought terror back to eastern DRC. Their military campaigns have led to the capture of critical cities. Think about Goma and Bukavu falling under rebel control. This isn't just about territory, it cuts off people from basic needs. Access to hospitals, food, and clean water becomes nearly impossible when conflict zones expand. Consequently, the humanitarian crisis deepens rapidly. M23's swift advances also mean they control key transportation routes. This stranglehold makes it even harder for aid to get in and for civilians to escape danger. The human cost is staggering. During the Goma offensive alone, estimates suggest between 900 and 2,000 people lost their lives. Total casualties, including the wounded, reached around 2,900. These numbers represent real families torn apart, communities devastated by violence directly linked to M23's actions. The suffering extends far beyond the immediate casualties. The conflict has created a massive displacement crisis. Over 1 million people have been forced from their homes, fleeing the violence with often nothing but the clothes on their backs. Imagine the fear and uncertainty of not knowing where your next meal will come from or where you'll sleep safely. This displacement puts immense strain on host communities and the already limited resources. Compounding the tragedy, attacks on essential infrastructure further hinder relief efforts. For instance, the offensive targeting Bukavu included attacks on Kavumu Airport. Airports are vital lifelines for delivering humanitarian aid, especially in a region with challenging terrain. Damaging them disrupts the logistics needed to support millions. Indeed, reports indicate a staggering 21 million people in the region require urgent humanitarian assistance. The scale of need is almost overwhelming. The conflict isn't happening in a vacuum. Regional powers are deeply involved, adding layers of complexity and tension. The DRC government has repeatedly accused neighboring Rwanda of supporting the M23 rebels. These accusations include claims of Rwandan troop deployments inside DRC and pursuing economic interests, particularly in the region's rich mineral resources. Rwanda denies these allegations, but the claims significantly hinder peace efforts. Tensions boiled over in January 2025 when the DRC severed diplomatic ties with Rwanda. They called Rwanda's alleged actions a declaration of war. Rwanda responded by evacuating its diplomats and suspending consular services. This diplomatic breakdown signals a dangerous escalation between the two nations. Meanwhile, other countries are also being drawn in. For example, over 10,000 Burundian troops were deployed to South Kivu to support Congolese forces against rebel groups. Altogether, this growing regional militarization raises fears of a wider conflict engulfing Central Africa. The massive displacement in eastern DRC highlights the extreme vulnerability of people caught in conflict. Over 1 million lives disrupted underscores the urgent need for safety and aid. This situation mirrors challenges seen globally, where crises often hit the most marginalized hardest. Looking at recent global health experiences, like the COVID-19 pandemic, can offer some parallels, particularly regarding access and equity. For example, studies on 2023 COVID-19 vaccines showed moderate effectiveness against severe outcomes like hospitalization. European data indicated around 49% efficacy initially for the XBB.1.5 vaccine, though this protection waned to about 40% after 2 months. Similarly, US CDC data showed efficacy dropping from 49% to just 14% after about 4 months. Crucially, vaccine uptake and effectiveness varied significantly. Pregnant women saw an 80% reduction in hospitalization risk if vaccinated, yet uptake was lowest among younger women, 33%, and Black women, 37%. Consequently, these disparities show how systemic factors impact health outcomes. a reality likely magnified in conflict zones like eastern DRC, where delivering any aid, let alone complex medical interventions, faces enormous hurdles. Despite the clear humanitarian catastrophe and regional instability, international responses have struggled to make a meaningful impact. Ceasefire agreements brokered by bodies like the East African Community, EAC, and the Southern African Development Community, SADC, have repeatedly failed. M23 has continued its offensives even when ceasefires were supposedly in place. The United Nations itself has expressed grave concerns, highlighting the risk of the situation spiraling into a third Congo war. This warning considers the devastating history of large-scale conflict in the region. Furthermore, the challenges seen in managing global crises, like the way new COVID-19 variants reduced vaccine effectiveness even further, show how difficult it is to respond effectively to rapidly evolving threats, whether they are viral or military. The people of Eastern DRC desperately need a breakthrough, requiring sustained international pressure, accountability for rights violations, and a genuine commitment to peace from all parties involved. Copyright African Elements.